I'm Will Leach. Welcome to the Commission Files. This podcast is made at Commission Christian Radio in Dundonald, outside Belfast. Now, let's imagine a place, a peaceful, friendly, calm place. You are welcomed there and you sense God's love for you, whatever is going on in your life, whatever has happened, wherever you are. A place for anyone, but perhaps an especially good place for teenagers. It's called The Big House, and I'm delighted to welcome its founder and chief executive, Dr. Angie Minion, and her self-confessed wingman, a counsellor at The Big House, Katie Mountstephen. Welcome, both of you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome to Studio 2, because when you imagined this place, this is not what you imagined, is it? No. Angie, why does the world need a peaceful, friendly, calm place?
That is a good question. Young people today have lots and lots of challenges, and sometimes life can feel a wee bit chaotic, a wee bit noisy, a wee bit much. And we have found that the Big House is a really valuable place for them to come to because it is away from all of that, and it is a little taste of what really good, safe home can be like, that you're somewhere that you can feel calm, you can let your shoulders down and relax and go, I can take a breath from what's been difficult in my day and what's been normal in my day, just actually get a bit of space. And we have loved to create this place so young people can get that sense, but also that they can discover more of God's love for them. And some of those young people will have that at home and they will know well what it is to be loved. But for some of them, it'll be new. And I think then it's especially valuable to have a place like that.
Why are we so aware of the need for a place like that? Why did Angie Minion think, I need to provide this?
I don't think I did come up with the idea. I think God gave me a really clear vision of it when I was a young person. So as a young person, I wasn't well for a number of years. And in the midst of that, I found the company of Jesus because it was my parents who spoke to me of him. They were the ones who cared for me and were with me through that time of sickness. And I knew the difference that made in my life. But I also noticed that there were lots of other young people who went through things and they maybe didn't have that support or that care at home. And in that context, God gave me a very clear vision and asked me to set up a place where young people could come, that they would also know the hope and the difference that he could make in life. So I don't think I came up with the idea. I think I was asked to set it up, and that was then the beginning of the Big House journey.
Why the Big House?
It is a big house. I guess because that was the vision. The vision that God gave me was to have a big house that was like a good home, where it was kind, where you would be heard, where you would be understood, and if you needed help, you would be given it. But that it was done I guess in the name of Jesus, that Jesus would be present and the company in it, because I really believe that there's nothing that Jesus can't enter into. I thought there's no dark situation or difficult situation that he can't come and be part of. And yet we face lots of things every day, whether we're adults or whether we're young people, that seem a bit much. They just seem a bit too difficult or a bit too dark or a bit too tricky. And we wonder how could this ever change, or how can we get through this? And for me as a young person, it was Jesus being present with me that made the difference, and being surrounded by a loving and supportive family and friends. And I guess recreating that for other young people, I hope is something in that concept of home that really changes lives.
Katie, you're a counsellor. Doing what exactly? Expand a bit on it for us.
So I would work with teenagers generally, well, young people from the ages of maybe 10, the youngest at the moment is 10 up to 18, through the Big House. So, I mean, what do you want to ask me? This is a counsellor question. I'm not used to talking, I'm used to asking questions.
So is that
you
start? Is that how you start? What do you want to ask me?
Well, I start with trying to get to know the young person, start with trying to understand who they are in the world, how they see themselves, what their goals are for counselling, what they're maybe struggling with, what's good for them as well. You want to know the good things, the good coping mechanisms that they have. You want to know about, the scaffolding around them, the things that are supportive to them. You also want to know about the stuff that's hard for them. And we talk about all of that. And we usually then, because when you ask me that question, I'm thinking about assessment and how we would do an assessment or how I would do an assessment. You really want to know what it is they want. What do they want to change in their life? If I had a magic wand, what would they want me to change? Which I obviously don't have. But it gives them a sense of a chance to dream and a chance to think, if things were different, what would I want to be different? And I suppose in terms of counselling, it's always for that young person to feel that empowered, that actually I have some autonomy and some agency over my own life, and I can make a change, or I can make changes if I need to or if I want to. So that's really how you would start that journey of counselling with a young person, or with anyone really.
We used to say in the broadcasting business, and we said it flippantly to cameramen, we've been in a course, haven't you? I mean, you can't just be a counsellor. You do have to train and know what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. You have to have, I think I've had 3 years of training, and actually with Big House a lot of that time, so with young people. So yes, lots of training. I think all of us in Big House have had lots of training. So, and that's part of what we do. We need to have that kind of grounding and knowledge base as well as just the heart for it. I think that's really important for us.
And why did you want to do it?
I always wanted to work with young people. I started as a youth worker and very much with churches. And then once I had my own children, I couldn't really do that anymore. Didn't have the energy for it. But I've always loved that relational one-on-one with a young person. And so then when I was thinking about career, now this is, post 40s, thinking about what I could do, and counselling seemed to be a good idea. So I felt God's call in my life, and definitely call into Big House as well, and that's been very much a part of my counselling journey, probably quite uniquely in terms of lots of counsellors, but it has been alongside Big House.
I want to clear something up. You said it is a big house, Angie. It's a big house in Limavady, isn't it? And yet not everything happens in Limavady. Have I got that right?
Yes, that's right. So we have our base, our home in the beautiful countryside just outside of Limavady, but we had been working as a charity for about 12 years before we got our base, and in that time we had set up a counselling service called The Listening Space, which Katie is working in, and we also then had developed a lot of youth programmes which we would take out and about to different youth groups and schools. So while we have our home and our base, we are very much out and about as well, and we've got counselling in Belfast as well as up at the house.
That helps me, Katie, understand a little more about how you end up doing what you're doing. How do these young people find you? Are they referred to you? Because there'll be somebody somewhere listening who thinks, I know someone that might help.
Yeah, we get lots of referrals in from some GPs, definitely from places like Scripture Union camps, SISM camps, from youth work. We have we try and work alongside other, Christian agencies and other charities, and so we like to kind of boast about each other in that too, and so we'll get referrals from various charities going into schools or in youth groups, and from our own youth worker, Chris, who'll be in schools. We get a number of referrals. He'll be in doing a programme, and from that there'll be somebody will say, actually, maybe we could do with a bit more one-on-one. So someone might come through that pathway too. And then there's also just word of mouth. People just knowing that we exist. I think that's really important, that people just know that we're a resource for them to use.
And how does it happen? Face-to-face, online?
Face-to-face mostly, occasionally online, but face-to-face is generally better when you're working, particularly with a young person. But it can't always happen. The online world can be very distracting. It's hard to get that focus, so it's particularly for a young person.
Yes.
So you have to work even harder. And also because I use so much, and, all of our counsellors will use creative methods. So we'll have our Jenga blocks, we'll have, philosophic question cards, we'll have games, play a lot of double.
Fascinated. How do you use Jenga blocks?
So you would be just asking questions, taking turns, asking questions about what's your favourite dinner ever. It's your turn. And tell me about, your dream for your life. So, and they get to ask that. So it's a bit more, you're trying to level the power dynamic there, So, and you're also just trying to get that young person to relax, because it's terrifying being with an adult who you don't know. So it's about trying to build relationship. And that's what we're all about. It's trying to build relationship with young people.
And how do you manage that just for adults and children? We all think you've got to get that right. You've got to keep the child safe and safeguard the adult as well. So
yes.
How's that managed?
Well, we have really robust protocols around that, in terms of our safeguarding, in terms of risk management. If we always explain that to the young person in counselling, in that context of when contracting is happening, that if you tell me anything that makes me feel like you're unsafe, or someone else is unsafe, or there's some law being broken, then I need to speak to your safe person, which is generally a parent. And so that's very clear to the young person from the outset. And then along the whole way, I have lots of safety buffers, and that's where it's great to be working as part of a team, because we've got a safeguarding officer and Angie, and so I always feel very held in that. I think that's can be part of the hard thing of counselling young people in general, is it can feel very risky, because you do hear stuff that is at times.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, feels like it's a lot for me to carry, but I have lots of robust kind of safeguarding around me as well.
You used a phrase a moment ago, I've no magic wand. You can't fix things for young people. You say, what do I do? And you may not necessarily even be wanting to say, here's what I think you should do, I imagine. So how does that work?
Well, I think we really believe in the power of relationship, and the power of just getting alongside someone and giving them space to talk. And I think part of the magic wand is just that sense of someone journeying alongside you and caring for you. And we're very explicit in this is a Christian charity. We're here because we see you as made in the image of God. We see you as fearfully and wonderfully made. And we're also bringing that perspective of God's perspective on you, that young person in front of us, that, it's not just me, but God's part of the equation. So obviously you need to be mindful of, ethical frameworks and guidelines, so there's that's another part of it. So, but faith is part of the conversation if the young person wants it to be in counselling, for sure.
You mentioned, Angie, that there's a lot of other things go on at the big house in Limavady, such as?
We have youth groups that will come and stay, say, for their if there's youth fellowship that want to have a weekend away, they can come and stay with us. We'll put on the programme for them and try and make it as fun time as possible, that their youth leaders can enjoy being with their young people and enjoy being in our place. We also have retreats for those in ministry or adult leaders. We've also got youth organisations who send their staff teams up to us for days away, weekends away. So we really are intentional about getting alongside other youth organisations and local churches to support them in the work they do with young people. So if we can encourage and support that in any way, then we'll look to do that. Some of that will be through training and organisational pastoral support. Others will be having staff leaders up at the house and providing retreats for them or weekends away.
You must have helped with all of that. You two couldn't possibly do all that.
That's right. There's many people involved at the house and on staff. We've got our house manager who looks after all the comings and goings in the house and the bookings and keeping us all where we need to be in order. And we've got our house chaplain who looks after all our retreats and the prayerful and pastoral end of our work. That would include pastorally supporting organisations and training, as well as what happens on the house or in the house. And then we have our programme worker who is out and about and at the house doing youth programmes. So we've got those staff members. We've also got volunteers who help out at the house, helping out with the cooking and the gardening. And we've got a board of directors working away in the background, as well as some other consultants that we pull in for graphic design and other bits and pieces. So we have a lot of people coming together to help us do what we do. we've got lovely grounds up at the house as well, which has hours and hours of gardening that goes into each week. So there's a range of people involved just trying to create this lovely place for people to come.
This is a very interesting time socially and globally. That's an understatement, to put it mildly. But if you read the newspaper this morning, if you watched a bit of news, it's the same every day. There's a lot of scary stuff going on. And people, never mind just teenagers, are more and more tied to what they read and what they watch and what they see and what influences them, even if it's just for a few seconds at a time. So how important is it that you do give people that opportunity to step away, to take time out from that obsessive little world we can all get ourselves into?
I think it's vital. I think it's really vital for them, for us all. And I would say adults, this is as much for us as our young people. And our young people mirror who we are. So when we look at them and we see their anxieties and their chaotic sort of struggles at times and their confusion, that we've shaped that environment for them. That's on us. And we as adults need to look at our patterns. So I think for all of us to be able to step out of what is a chaotic world and just have time to catch your breath. And for me, a little bit more than that, catch our breath. And what is God saying to us in this? Where is God's peace? Where is his hope? Where is his life? Because for us as people who follow Jesus, he's called us to resurrection life, to good life. And he has full life for us. But so often, even us as Christians who are doing our best to follow Jesus can get caught in the normal of life and actually miss that resurrection life and that hope and light in ourselves. So I think for us as leaders to be stepping aside and remembering our Creator, remembering what Jesus has actually given us for today in life, then we are enabled to share with our young people the very vital life-giving message that they need in this chaos of a world, and bring them hope, and to be their company. So without us being able to step off the busyness and the urgency, then I don't know how we actually can help them, because I think that's part of the problem.
Is that the biggest challenge? Getting a perspective and a bit of time and a bit of space?
I think it might be. I think in our normal life, it's hard to hear what Jesus is saying to you. And unless you take deliberate time aside to do that, then you just miss something. And I certainly know in my life that knowing the presence of Jesus with you is what makes the difference. And whether that's a day, I think back to teenage years of severe illness, the company of Jesus is what made the difference in that. Of that being something that you could still have hope in and live in. And everybody's got different challenges. So for young people today, for those who have experienced family breakdown, how do they live as well as they can in that situation and have hope in that and know Jesus in that? I think Jesus is what will make the difference for them and that company. Their situation won't change, but knowing that presence with them could make a difference. So for me, that's what drives me in knowing that. If a young person doesn't have faith, I still think getting time aside and a way and a perspective of there is more to life than what's thrown at you every day. And remember, you're a really valuable person and you're worthy of respect, and be around people who respect you and are kind to you. That message and that ethos that we carry, I think, is true for any young person and any adult, whether they have faith or not. And I think that's different to a lot of the messages in our world at the minute.
Katie, my parents and my grandparents would have said, you know what, you're doing exactly the same things we did and making the same mistakes and having the same triumphs that we did, just in a different context. Is that true? Are young people all the time, all the same?
Yes, they are. They're all individuals as well, though, and one young person is not the same as every other young person that you meet. And I think we all need to feel that we're all individuals and that God sees us, and that He made us unique and we have a place and a role in this world to play, so I think that's so important. We think about self-esteem and stuff like that, and we all struggle with that at times, but I think for so many young people there's so much exterior idea of what it is to be a young person, and I think we're just trying to, this is a different perspective, and allows them to think about that a bit more. I think what you said about, just giving people space to reflect and to think about, what am I thinking about? I think that's a lot of what we're doing, is allowing them just to, what are the messages, what are the things that I'm just absorbing sort of subconsciously, and then I'm integrating that into my sense of self or into the way that I am in the world, and is that really how I want to be? So that's a really important space for young people and for all of us to think.
Well, these are years, the 10 to 18, where you're still working out who you are.
Very
and I
formative.
hadn't worked it out when I was 18.
No, absolutely not. And your brain's still developing. Your prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until you're at least 25. So that's your ability to think rationally. I may be older than that now. But your ability to think rationally and to think in that kind of mature adult sense, it's not there. It's not even a possibility until their mid-20s. And so I think it's also offering young people grace to say, it makes sense that you feel this way. Of course you do. But it's okay. And those feelings won't always be there. Feelings are just feelings. And you may think differently. Give it a bit of time. Give it a bit of time. Give it a bit of space. And don't always rush to react. Think things through.
What are the things you keep saying over and over again as you meet fascinating young people and you say, oh, I wish this just wasn't a thing, because it keeps coming up again and again and again?
I think self-esteem, like low self-esteem and feeling that they're not good enough, comparison with other people. Obviously anxiety is the big thing at the minute that's being shouted around, but I think a lot of that is about that, and about I need to be perfect, and achievement, I need to achieve.
And everybody I see on the screen is perfect and achieves.
Yeah, it's all fake, so
Yes.
They're not seeing what real life is really like or what real people are really like, so if that makes sense.
No, it doesn't go away. Every really bad bit of this
Exactly.
podcast is cut out.
Yes, we have to curate, don't we?
We've been sitting here for several hours. It's not in fact true. But
Yeah. If only we could create a perfect life, and but we can't.
Very, very, very interesting. You're listening to the Commission Files. Time for a quick break.
His name meant son of encouragement. He was prepared to talk to an enemy.
My name is Saul. I must speak with the leaders of the way.
Really? Well, I think you may as well come in.
Barnabas.
I doubt if Saul is planning to arrest us. Come in, Saul. We'll hear what you have to say.
And together they spread the good news. Commission presents Barnabas. You can hear this and other Bible dramas by Commission. Just search for Commission Bible Drama wherever you get your podcasts.
This is the Commission Files with Will Leach, and I'm chatting with Dr. Angie Minion and Katie Mountstephen of The Big House. I'm going to make it a little bit more personal and find out what makes each of you tick for a moment. Angie, you wrote a book and I read it. What's it about?
The book is about my experience as a young person, so years that I wasn't well, and then about the amazing miracle that God did in my life. So that's the spoiler, isn't it? Because it starts with sickness and it ends with a healing.
Well, you called the book Held. It was about a lot of years as a teenager when you were ill. ME, is that right?
That's right. So I got ME at a stage where it wasn't believed to be a real illness, and certainly that young people wouldn't get it. I had it for almost 10 years and wasn't well enough to go to school during that time. And I guess through those adolescent years, my experience was very different to other young people's. for me as a young person, there wasn't hope medically. The doctors didn't understand what was going on in my body. They didn't have a route out of it. And that obviously impacted then schooling and other opportunities and experiences. So you could have looked at my life and thought, what will happen? This is a disaster. It was bleak. It was certainly a horrible experience to be that unwell. But for me, the difference, including God in that, made was incredible, because there was hope then, and actually God worked in ways that I couldn't have imagined. I don't think I even knew that healing still happened, because yes, it was in the Bible, and yes, I believed and followed the Bible, but I didn't know anybody who'd been healed. So to actually be in a situation there that after years of praying, a miracle actually happened, and I went from at times needing to use a wheelchair, being on a lot of pain medication, and an exhaustion that was not normal, to being able to walk and not being in pain, was incredible. But I knew that God had healed me for a purpose, and that was for Big House. That was to tell young people that Jesus loved them and genuinely could be with them in the midst of their worst situations.
You did have an experience, and you write very well about it. And believe me, I was gutted every time you had a setback in your illness. But
so was I.
I think you have more of a right, quite clearly. You knew the date your healing was going to happen. You sat with your sister and waited for it to happen. Not many people can tell a story like that, and you know it's true.
I know. And that's been such a privilege to know that actually God is real. He is alive. He is at work. The Jesus of the Bible is the same Jesus today. And actually he's that involved and interested in the little things of our days and our life. And he showed me that in the details of knowing, Angie, this is when I'm going to heal you, in a way that no one else will be able to explain or understand. I still wouldn't be able to totally put into words the depth of experience that happened, but the change in my body was undeniable, and completely noticeable by people all around, and that's amazing. And I hope that from that there's the tangible hope that Big House will offer to young people, but also if they hear a little bit of the backstory, to know this Jesus that they're talking about does actually change lives. It's not just a storybook. It's not just the things that happened many centuries ago, but actually that could still happen today. And yes, I'm, I guess, the living example of that. And even though I'm not young or anywhere near young anymore, then I hope something that will really encourage them to trust Jesus with the little tiny things of the day, because I think he really does care about those, and also the big darker things that are maybe don't seem to have any hope or any possibility of change in them. I can absolutely stand over the fact God can intervene even in those situations.
When you got that opportunity and that new start and that call, you didn't sit about, you went and studied and worked. I've referred to you as Dr. Angie a couple of times. What did you study?
I studied theology, so practical theology, and I looked at the theology of the cross and of the church and the needs of young people in Northern Ireland, and how could we as God's people accurately represent a theology of the cross that offered hope and life to young people in Northern Ireland and the reality of the needs that they had. So yes, I went from healing to working with young people in a number of different settings, and then carried on with studies to really research and map out what would become Big House.
Who's your support? Your family?
Family, and so many people along the way God has brought into my life or into the life of Big House that have journeyed together on this, and I love that within the big house, there's everybody involved on some level has their own story of like, yes, this was a God pull towards big house. I've been called to this or asked this. So I think there's a sharing of heart and vision, and that for me has been really, really important and lovely to have that company.
One question I wanted to ask you after reading your book was, when this process of illness, this trial started, you didn't know God. Your parents had explained him to you, but you weren't a believer, as you write in the book yourself. And nice people came and prayed with you, but you felt a pressure to believe what they believe. And I just wonder, does that help steer the way Big House works now, where if people have faith, fine, and if they don't have faith, fine, you're going to explain who Jesus is, but you're not going to put anybody under pressure?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, when I wasn't a Christian when I became sick, but I'd grown up in church and Christian home, and I think it was more a stage of, it hadn't become mine yet. But around 14, 15, there was maybe, I was becoming more aware of it needing to either own it myself or not. But unfortunately, I experienced a couple of situations which just made me feel a little bit pressured. So I absolutely would not want any young person to ever feel pressure if they came to Big House, and it doesn't matter if they've faith or no faith. Whether I absolutely decided I wasn't going to follow Jesus, when I was 14, 15, because of that sense of pressure. Thankfully, God, worked with me gently. But what I know of God is that He is gentle and patient and kind, and we will always look to have our programmes reflect that, and the people who are part of our team reflect that. And I think faith will come at different speeds and in different ways for different people, but as long as we as Big House just offer out the kindness and the hope of Jesus, then it's up to anybody else what that becomes for them. And if it doesn't become faith but they've been helped, then that's still a great thing for us to have been part of.
Yeah.
Katie, tell me all the places you worked.
Well, I've worked in Lurgan YMCA, is where I started working, doing youth work. And I worked in Brazil, in São Paulo, for a while with the Oasis Trust.
How's your Portuguese?
Very bad. I'm not a linguist. And I think you see young people they are all just longing for connection. They really are, and language can be a real barrier, but it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be. You can find ways to communicate. I've worked for multiple churches through the years, doing a variety of things, and I've recently been in Campbell College as a classroom assistant for a period of time, which has given me good insight into what school is like for kids these days as well. That's been very helpful.
It's very different, isn't it?
Very different. Oh my goodness, yes. It's hard to be a teacher. It is hard.
What's your faith story? Why do you follow Jesus?
Well, I have been a Christian really since I was tiny, since I was about 7. And so I guess I have never not, in some ways, walked with Jesus in that sense. So, and there's been lots of ups and downs over the years too with that. Why do I follow Jesus? Because He's real to me, and because I've seen Him work in my life, and it's the biggest, I guess, the greatest strength that I have in terms of doing life, and the greatest sort of sense of anchor. So whenever you're going through a hard time, and there have been lots of hard times, that you have a real sense of safety, that the waves are big and high, but you're not going to be subsumed by them. So that would be, I guess, my personal experience of walking with God, and the choice, daily, I suppose, to do that. So it's felt like a very real thing to me all my life. So I don't know if that answers your question, Will.
Of course it answers the question. But you also have a family. Each of you has 3 children. I mean,
yes.
I'm delighted that you even made it here to come and sit and get them all, more or less, I gather, where they roughly had to be today. So, life is complicated and life is busy and life is messy, and that you're trying to bring this space and this sanity to people. So you must have a way of putting yourself in that place to prepare for other people who need to be helped into that place.
think we're all living that way, aren't we, at the moment? That's everybody's experience of having to, like, working and living and navigating life. We all have to do that, don't we? The kind of professional face as well. You kind of put your own stuff on a high shelf in the room sometimes. But I think you have to be well grounded, just in knowing the tools to get yourself in a calm, regulated state. That's very important. And I think, that's part of what we do in Big House sort of pastorally, is trying to model that a lot of the time, that it's possible to be well regulated and, present for people.
You mentioned this a little bit, but you hear stuff and you do your best with young people, but sometimes you think, right, that's quite serious, or that's quite hard, or I'm going to think about this if I wake up in the middle of the night.
Yes,
of course. How do you manage that?
Oh, and there's some that really stay with you, and in fact they all do. I think, like, there's not a young person that I meet that I don't like, and of course when you like and you care about them and you hear their stories, there's times your heart does break, and I'll show them that I care. Like, obviously I'm not within the boundaries of that professional context, but I think it's okay to show someone that you're affected by their story, to be moved, because that's you showing them compassion and empathy, and that's right, that we don't just bottle everything up, and it's okay to talk about stuff. In terms of carrying it with you when you leave that room, I have my ways of doing that, and being able to offload that, and obviously go to supervision and have a lot of professional structure around that, which you have to have for counselling. So we work very ethically. There's an ethical framework in place that also helps to safeguard us in the work too that we do, because we do hear hard stuff.
And you hear stuff that, you mentioned the safe person, which I find very important, because at times you hear stuff that other people have to hear.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and you can't keep that to yourself. That wouldn't be helpful to the young person. We're always working in the best interests of the young person, and absolutely take their safety as the most important thing, and that's made very clear to them. So we don't keep secrets for them, and we're reminding them of that all the time. This is not a place just to tell me stuff that then you run away. Leave it here.
You can't sit there and say, don't tell anyone this, but...
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And I'll always say that, if I feel it's going down that road of, remember the contract, remember what we've agreed, that we may need to talk to somebody about this, but we'll talk together about what that would look like. We come up with that together. The young person, if that happens and there's a disclosure made in session, the parent is invited in and we talk together about what's happened. So we try and do it very collaboratively. We're trying to work with the child's system, and we're trying to think about the best interest in them going forward, because I only see them maybe once a week, for an hour. So we're thinking about how do we support that young person sort of globally in the sense of who's in their world, who are their good people, safe people, who can they talk to when they don't have a counsellor to talk to? Is there a youth leader? Is there a teacher at school? Is there somebody in their church that they trust, so that they're not just left on their own? So,
how do people find you if they need you or want to help you?
The best place is probably to go to our website, which is thebighouse.org.uk, and there you'll find all the links if you're wanting to come and bring your youth group or bring your leadership group for residential, or if you want to find out about our programmes, Shaken, Steady and Strong. They really encourage young people to move from that place of being a little bit shaky and shaken in life to growing strength and connection with God and that. So those programmes, there's information on them on the website. There's information on the listening space on the website, and our contact details as well. So head there, or if you are on the Drumcerne Road in Limavady, then knock the door and you will be welcomed.
Katie, way back when this woman took a chance on you, when you said, I want to be a counsellor, you glad she did?
Oh, 100%, definitely. No, that was a very much a God ordained directing in my life, for sure, to reach out to Angie. I knew nothing about the Big House before that, but then this whole world has opened up to me, So, yeah, it's been an amazing journey for me personally.
Let's talk vision before we finish. Angie, when you look at the Big House now and that amazing building, and it does look great on the internet because I haven't been.
It is great.
What's your dream for what happens next? Your hope, your plans? where you think God's taking you?
Well, on a very practical level, in terms of our actual building, we need more bedrooms because we are turning bigger groups away at the minute. So I would love a dorm block built. We have planning permission, we have the space, but we need the cash to make it happen. That would be brilliant, and I think that would give us opportunity to have more young people stay, and hopefully more of them here and experience just the love and hope that God has for them. So that would be the next stage of the dream, is just to get that built, that we can welcome more.
And can you help every child who's referred to you? Have you space, people, ability to get everybody who needs help helped?
No, and that's really unfortunate, isn't it? Because the need is overwhelming, but also we're tiny still as a charity in Northern Ireland. We have been running now for 15 years, and we started really, really tiny, and we're a wee bit bigger now. But we could really, if we had more resources and we're able to have a bigger staff team, we're able to have more volunteers, then we could help more young people. And I hate turning groups and young people away, because as Katie's, so clearly showing to us, there's some of the stories that you hear are just heartbreaking, and we're just scratching the surface and hearing a few of them, but there's many more to hear. There's also just so many on the other end of the scale in terms of preventative youth work that can be done. The number of young people who can just come and have really good fun activities and time with their youth leaders and establish those relationships, which can help prevent a young person getting to the crisis stage. Because for all of our young people, if we have good relationships and they know that there's adults who really care for them, who are really listening to them and are available, then there'll be less crises, because they've got the help nearby. So we think our residentials and our programmes can be really, really helpful in helping that along. But if we had more space and more resources, then we can do more.
I'm thinking of that young woman sitting with her sister, waiting to see if she was going to be well, and if you told her she was going to be the chief executive of a charity, you would have laughed your head off, wouldn't you? But guess what? You've been doing it 12 to 15 years and making a difference. Do you ever reflect on that? Think, what a journey God takes you on?
Yes, it's amazing. And it is that little verse in Ephesians that God can do immeasurably more than we ask or imagine. And yes, when he first planted that vision for Big House, my honest response was, well, that's impossible. Like, why would you ask me? And sure, I can't do that. How could that ever happen? And I have seen God do miracles and be at work. And I think when God can do immeasurably more than we ask or imagine. And I am sure that will be Big House's story in the next chapter. And I am excited to see what he will bring in that, because he's done many miracles already, but we long to see more and more young people with their own stories, that it wouldn't just be my story, well, that's good for me, but there would be many, many young people who have stories to tell of how Jesus has come close and how they've known his kindness and how that's changed their lives. That's what we long to hear.
Angie, Katie, thank you both for joining us in the Commission Files. Thanks for your stories and your insights. It's been lovely to hear from you both. Thanks to all of you for listening. Why not have a look at our website, commissionradio.org, or our Facebook page, Commission Broadcast Centre. You'll see photos of people acting on the radio with that particular uniqueness that brings to a photograph. You'll find links to our YouTube channel, Instagram, and all that sort of thing. And we'll be back soon. Bye.